guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be answering some of your frequently asked questions about rat breeders and getting your rats from a breeder with the help of two of my friends who are reputable breeders here in the UK. So today I'm going to be joined by Emma, who is Alpine Rats, and also Lynn, who is Aurora rattery. They do actually both have YouTube channels, which I'll leave linked down in the description as well as all of their other links, but they are both breeders based up in Scotland. So to those people that comment saying they can't understand my accent, you may struggle a little bit with their accents, so I will try my best to figure out how to add subtitles, just in case anything isn't clear from the audio or you have a little bit of difficulty. So this is something that we would have loved to have done in person, but obviously that's not possible at the minute, so we are about to jump on a Zoom call to answer your questions. Hello? Okay, so I'm joined with Emma and Lynn. Do you want to introduce yourselves and talk a bit about your rattery, how long you've been breeding, and what varieties you breed for? Emma, you can go first if you want.
Okay. Oh yeah, October 2018 is when I started to breed, but I've had rats probably 10 years originally rescuing, so breeding's just a recent thing that I've started to do, well, relatively recent compared to most of the people in the rat fancy. And it was because of the rat fancy that I started to breed. So I focus on cinnamon, cinnamon pearl and pearl, with a likelihood of mink because that's required, and that is UK mink that I'm basing it on. And I have started breeding hopefully what will be the first tricolour rats from Hooded, but that's a really close collaboration with Hawthorn rats.
Lynn, your turn.
So that's just over 2 years now I've been breeding. I'm showing my age when I say that I've kept rats for like 20 odd years. So yeah, I started small. And I did do a lot of the rescuing first. So I spent so many years like rescuing and adopting rats. And then it got to the stage where I couldn't cope with all the health issues. Plus at that point I became more involved in natural fancy. Hawthorn's very persuasive to get people to breed. I think she's encouraged a lot of people to breed, and that just made me want to find what I wanted to breed. So I went for a Agouti Rex. I love Rex, so I basically tried to make curly everythings. I've moved into the Russian Blue Agouti and Russian Dove Agouti. Rex and normal, smooth as well. So yeah, basically I like to Rex everything, and I like the Agouti based things. So that's kind of what I'm mostly working on just now.
I think it's nice that you both started with rescuing. I think a lot of people think it's either rescue or breeders and there's no like crossover, or they think that breeders are against rescue and don't support rescues, but you both started in that background, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, I think I don't know what it's like in other countries because Lynn and I can only really speak for the UK rat fancy, and specifically Scottish fancy in the north of England, where we're both heavily involved in shows. Thanks, the song of my people is starting behind me. But what I found is that there are dedicated rescues. I think it's a Wee Critters rescue is exclusively rescue, but a lot of breeders also take in rescues or will help to rehome rats that are in an urgent kind of care need. So we tend to do both of them, and it's very separate. Like you would never take a rescue rat and then decide that that rat's going to be part of your breeding program. That's just very irresponsible. But we're definitely there to help rats in every way that we can.
So you ready to answer some questions?
Yes.
So I think the first one is pretty much the one that I got asked the most, and I think it's also one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to breeders. And that's, do you make a profit from selling your rats? And is it a business? Emma?
We're like, no. So I definitely make a loss. It's definitely a hobby, a very expensive hobby. I really question if the idea of it being a business doesn't sit with me very well. And a hobby kind of feels a little bit frivolous. Yeah, no.
I think a lot of the people that were kind of asking me that question were saying, how can I do it as a job or as a business? And I think if you're going into it wanting to make money, you're not doing it for the right reasons. And you probably spend so much more money on your rats than you ever get back from them. So yeah.
The cages that I choose to have, because I like uniformity, is the SRS. That's a very expensive cage, and it's because I like it. I could choose another variety, but I want them to match. So they're very expensive. And then the cost of a kitten, so a pair kittens, because that's the minimum, is like £40. And normally, like, I don't home that many kittens. Most of them are kept by me or are gifted to other people in the fancy who want, you know, the like muscle tone in my rats to improve their lines. And that's always a gift because I want to help the fancy. I feel like if you do want to get profit, then you're looking at mass production of rats and cutting, well, what to me, as someone who spends a lot on rat mix, would be cutting corners and the raising of it. So it would be very different to how I raise my rats. But Lynn, you've thought about it quite a lot as well.
I mean, you've made most of the good points. Like that is it. Like, bottom line, if you do it right, you make nothing. Like you lose money. I mean, people follow me, say many things I like keep buying for them. You know, oh, I sold kittens. I will now go buy them more things back again. I have like about 6 Tic Tac wheels. They're £50 a wheel. You know what I mean? They're not cheap. They're not. I mean, I wouldn't even call it necessarily a hobby as such. Like that's probably the best way to describe me as a hobbyist breeder. But it's like a passion. You know, it's more. They are my pets, but it's a joy being able to have some to be able to go off to other homes. So it's yeah, there's definitely like no money. I thought about making like a spreadsheet, like, oh, how much money do I spend in a year? And then I made myself sad at the thought of it, so I didn't do it. I mean, I've been kind of living at the vets recently, like just for different reasons. I've been going and spending quite a lot of money there, and it's just like, you know, you get phases where I won't see a vet for months and months, and then suddenly it's like, oh, you know, they're all getting older, they're all not in the best shape, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of suddenly at the vets more, or I'm suddenly having to buy more. So no, bottom line, I'm afraid no money is to be made. It's a passion project, definitely.
That's describing it than a hobby, because hobby doesn't feel like the right word, but I'm going to say passion from now on. Passion project.
Passion project, that's what we do.
So the next question, and this is something I get asked quite a lot, even though I personally have spoken about it quite a lot, and that's, how do I find a good rat breeder?
So everyone will start off by telling you to check like the breeders list, and that is 100% like a good place to start. But you need to remember that to get on that list is actually very simple. You have to be registered for a year, and then you can apply for your name, and as long as your name's not taken, it will get passed. So that doesn't necessarily prove to that group that I'm ethical in any way. It just means I've been a member for a year and I've paid a one-off fee. So even the ones that are on there, you should be approaching them, asking questions. Like anyone that is not willing to be transparent with you is like a big no-no. Like you shouldn't. I've got nothing to hide. I'm not going to tell you that my rats are 100% healthy, because that's like saying I'm 100% healthy and I've never been sick and I'll never be sick. You know what I mean? Like it's not possible. Certainly from having rescued for all those years and then comparing it to just 2 years alone of breeding, like the difference in the health that I've noticed is like unbelievable. And that's having good, strong lines versus unknown and, you know, really badly, poorly bred lines. I mean, I'm taking that as my experience for how different the health can be, but I'll never tell you that mine are 100% healthy either.
So I think looking at the list is a good start, but I'd also recommend for people to join the forums, join the Facebook groups, go to rat shows, actually meet the people that are breeding the rats and have a proper conversation with them, rather than just relying on the list solely for picking a breeder. I think talking to other people that have also got rats from that breeder and asking them their experience is where you go after looking at the list initially.
Yeah, recommendations are always good, but at the same time, remember some recommendations can be biased. But it's like that with any pet.
Yeah.
Like anyone, you know, can be biased. So ask your own questions and, you know, go from your gut feeling of what you feel about the person as well, definitely.
Yeah, I think sometimes having a good rapport with the people that you're reaching out to helps. A good breeder. So I think Lynn's covered it very well, and I don't think there's a very good checklist that you can tick off when you reach out to people and you're like, I'm guaranteed to find a good breeder, because I think what the definition of a good breeder is entirely subjective. But what's important is that when you choose, or when you choose to get rats from like Lynn and I, then we have a relationship, and it's not like from Tinder relationship. We don't have to talk every day, but I want to hear how the kittens are getting on. And I have a mix of experienced homes, but also new homes. And if they ever have something come up that they're not sure about, and it can be anything from, you know, a pink-eyed rat just doing the kind of like head trace thing, I want them to feel like they can come to me, and I'll be able to reassure them or offer advice for whatever can be there, or like ever could come out, or they could be concerned about, especially if someone doesn't feel comfortable asking in a big group in case they dogpile them. So, you know, finding somebody that you trust and who you've got a good rapport with is definitely a really good way of starting that relationship. But I do think it's a little bit of a baptism of fire trying to work out which breeders are correct, because a lot of people are nice people, a lot of people are charismatic, so it's taking a bit of time to read, you know, different rattery websites or check out different Facebook groups and work out what is important for you when you choose to get your rats, and then ask questions to help you assess whether that person meets what you want to support.
Something that I get asked and told about quite often is someone lives, I don't know if this is mostly in the US, they live somewhere, I'm sorry if you can hear humbug drinking, someone lives somewhere and they say, oh, I can't find a good rat breeder in my area, or there's no rat breeders within like an hour of where I live. Yeah. And I think it is important to travel that little bit extra to get rats from someone that you're going to trust. But also I think it's worth looking into other options. So maybe you could meet them at a rat show that's kind of central and in the middle of where the both of you live to make it a bit easier. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think distance shouldn't really be always an option that's putting you off going to a good breeder, because there's always things you can kind of work out to meet in the middle or something.
Yeah, definitely. I probably wouldn't always, like, I don't want to guarantee that I would ever drive a rat to somebody's house, but like Lynn and I especially, we go to Doncaster for rat shows kind of thing, or like we've certainly travelled long distances for rats and for shows. So those are things that you can arrange with the breeder kind of thing.
I mean, my foundations came from Leeds, so that's not really just round the corner. So you've got to be willing to meet somewhere halfway in that, and it is possible. Like rat trains, if that's what you want to call them, or transporting them, like it can happen and it can be done. And being part of, like, involved in the fancy makes that so much easier, because there's so many people willing to help you. Because I actually had another breeder very kindly drive mine up, like go pick them up in Leeds, went out of her way, I paid her petrol, and then drove them up to the Glasgow show, and then I got them in Glasgow. I mean, that's just getting, you know, support of the fancy helping you, and it's so easy during, you know, to do that and then just move them around. So they can, like, don't get put off by distance.
Yeah,
definitely not.
Next question, what do you send your rats to their new homes with? Lynn?
It varied. There's a kind of staple part that goes, which is your back to nature sample and food, which is my rat mix. They're kind of the staples. And then it's whatever I decide to go in it. I tend to have some toys, some shelled nuts, just little bits of food. If I have little treats, I'll put them in. A feather cat wand, I tend to always put them in because they're really fun to play with. It was a bit different the last ones that I did because they weren't really kittens anymore. So normally I would include like a high protein dog pouch or like a little tin. But yeah, it really just varies. Most breeders tend to do some sort, more so because we like it. Like, you know, it almost sounds like, you know, all breeders have to do it, and they don't. It's just if you choose to do it. And I mean, I guess I can equate it to, you know how in Scotland they do a baby box?
Yeah.
Set every baby up to go off and like be the same and have this really good start in life. So we do a kitten pack so like your baby can go off and have a really good start in life. So basically that's really what it is. It's just to help them, you know, give something. And also I personally feel a bit weird taking the money for them, especially when it's a trio. I feel really weird taking like £50 off of someone. They're just, I know they're getting rats and that's like a living thing, but I don't know, I feel a bit better that at least got something else for them to have with it. Mm-hmm. Really, it varies what goes in it. And I've actually ordered stuff to make their own little toys. I'm sure they won't be fantastic, but it'll be something else that I can put in. And, you know, I feel like I've contributed more to their little kitten pack.
Yeah, I feel like that ties in with the first question as well, with the making a profit. it just shows that you don't make any profit because you're including all these other things for them to go to their new homes with.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to add, Emma?
No, it's exactly the same as Lynn. Although right now, because this is being filmed when the UK is still in, well, especially Scotland, we're just in phase 1. So there's not been toys going with the kittens, but they have been getting a bag of Vitalin just for extra protein as well as their mix. But I've not been given around, but it's the same as Lynn. You know that way whenever you're kind of just browsing the internet and then you'll see little things, and if you've got kids, like maybe they'll play with them, and if they do play with them, then you'll just send them away with their homes just to give them more opportunities to bond over something familiar. And it's really nice if you get sent videos with them and you can see the toys in the background and you're like, oh, people are looking after them and they love them, and it's just really nice.
So the next question is, how did you get into breeding and start your lines? And I wanted to ask this because a lot of backyard breeders tend to use rescue rats or they'll use pet store rats, so I think it's important to talk about where you actually started your lines from. Emma?
Yep. So I'd been in the rat fancy for quite a while, and they're very open, they being the people in the rat fancy who run the shows, they're very open about how there's always a need for more good rat breeders to exist and to operate. It's a good way of helping to distribute the lines, and because there's many of them, and just, you know, it's in the better interest of rats. And I remember I was going to like lots of show after parties, and these topics were being brought up again and again, and I'd gone from, so I had 4 rats at the time, and I was just showing them in pets kind of thing. It was just a group of rescues, and then Bear, who was from Hawthorne. And then I started to get the idea where I was like, oh, maybe I would like, but I think for me, I was very much on the fence where and Amy will know this because we talked at length about it, I did feel a little bit conflicted between becoming a breeder and bringing more animals into the world, and my very firm guinea pig rescue mindset, which is there's more than enough, there's loads in rescue, this is horrible. And I did a lot of well, obviously not so much research because I was already well informed, but observations. I noticed that actually rats in the UK, especially in Scotland, there's not so much an overpopulation. There are rats that from maybe a poor situation, there'll be multiples of them that will burst into rescues, but they tend to not have problems finding homes unless they have very specialist problems. And I don't say that that helped me feel comfortable with the idea, but certainly that I wasn't contributing to overpopulation definitely helped. And I was talking to Toya about what variety should I start with. There are a lot of varieties that are available for you to ask for, which have inherent issues associated with that breed. And I was very firmly like, I don't want to be learning how to raise kittens and also learning to navigate issues and, you know, have increasing the likelihood that I'll be breeding rats with problems. So I didn't want to go near that with a barge pole until I felt comfortable that I knew how to raise a babies and they would be happy and people would love them. So I was given a foundation, well, 2 does as a foundation. And the plan was that if I didn't like it, that's fine, because they would have been bred anyway. And that was Primrose and Juniper. And I bred her, and my plan was that I'd fallen in love with variegated and marked varieties. So I was going to breed Cinnamon Pearl, I know, right? Cinnamon Pearl, and then I was going to be a proper breeder and breed marked varieties. And I'm glad that I had basically my hand held by Hawthorne with that first litter while I tried to settle myself a little bit, because Cinnamon Pearl is beautiful, but I was like, I'm going to be a proper breeder and breed marked. Because when I actually looked more into what's required to breed good marked and how not to standard they would be, because it's also important to me that they do well in shows, I found that the volume of rats I would need is way beyond my comfort zone. And the more I bred, I just fell in love with Cinnamon and Cinnamon Pearls. But that was partnership with a breeder, because it took a little while before I then could keep bucks and does. So mainly bucks because my partner is deathly allergic, but it was certainly partnering up with other ratteries. And the more known I got, the more offers I got from other rats or ratteries like Zamu and Aurora as well. where I then started to get offered cinnamon rats so that I would be able to kind of take my line in particular directions. So it was very much, I wouldn't say it's mentorship because I'm very good friends with a lot of the ratteries that helped me to establish, but it was very much a kind of community support that helped me to get involved.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing when it comes to wanting to start, is having that support from other breeders that are already established. I can imagine doing it by yourself and having all of these questions and not knowing what's going wrong, not having anyone to ask about that would be quite daunting. So I think having that support is really important. Is there anything you want to add, Lynn?
Just ironically that I also like the look of like a marked variety to start. I like variegated. I was like, oh, you're really pretty. And then it was like, yeah, but you're going to need like quite a lot. I was like, probably shouldn't do that. So my logical brain went Rex. And you need to keep a lot of Rex bucks and you get maybe 1 out of 10 that's actually really, really good. So really I've just ended up with lots of Rex anyway. So yeah, definitely go with your passion when you're picking your variety. And in saying that, I mean, I said mine came from Leeds, that I picked where my passion was, and then I was like, well, okay, they're in Leeds. Right, now I need to work out how to get them here. I didn't go, what are the people nearest me breeding? I did obviously then move on to getting Russian Blues, which helped because I got Russian Blues from another local breeder. But I want to make Russian Blue Gooty. So it's like, I mean, they kind of did tie in, but I didn't go out my way to go, I need to breed something that somebody up here has. It was pick where your passion lies and then work out how to get them to you. And I think being like involved with the people in the fancy up here, I felt that I got my foundations really, really quick. I approached 2 different breeders, which was Stilly Rats and Endeavour, and they're both down south. None of them had ever heard from me, ever. I'm just like, hi, here's a bit about me. I'd really like to breed like agouti rats, blah, blah, blah. And quite quickly I got 2 does off of one and 2 bucks off the other. And I really feel that me being a part of the fancy up here and knowing people and being involved helped, because I'm sure they maybe spoke to someone up here and said, do you know her, blah, blah. So I think that helped. And I probably got my foundations within about 6 to 8 months of looking, which I think is pretty quick. So definitely, again, it shows like being part of the fancy like helps that, but don't narrow it down to what someone has around you just for convenience, because your heart's then not in that variety. So yeah, go with your heart with it, and just don't let the distance get in the way if you're traveling for them.
So what would you say to someone that's maybe sat at home right now and thinking, I want to breed my rats just to experience having a litter and just to have cute babies? What would you say to someone that's considering doing that or might have already started doing it?
Please don't. That's the kind of short answer. Please don't. I think like a lot of people show, like, you see all the cute pictures. I get it, baby animals are cute. Like, I love sharing pictures of the baby animals, but there's so much like around that go wrong. And I think it's not that it doesn't happen. I think there's not a lot of people that discuss what can go wrong. I mean, you've probably seen on some of the online groups, if someone says, oh, I think this girl's pregnant, and everyone says, right, let's get Galastop, let's terminate it so she doesn't have this, pregnancy too young, unknown, etc. And everyone's just like, oh no, it'll be fine, just let her have them. But there's such like a small window that things can go wrong. And I think people need to be aware that things can go wrong. And it very much has gone wrong. Like, I almost had to put to sleep a 7-week-old kitten who was terribly ill. And, that was quite traumatic, but he thankfully pulled through. That was like hero. He's still here. But I mean, going through things like that, I've had a doe die. And that was like a painful learning experience, because I do blame myself for that, because I didn't notice one was trapped. So she ended up dying through necrosis of her womb. So I'd very much blame myself for that, from my inexperience, for not properly checking that. And I know people will say, oh yeah, but that's like a tiny % that can happen. And sure it is, like definitely it is a tiny % that these things can happen, but it still does happen. So every time we mate a doe, we have to know that things can go wrong. She could have an entirely dead litter. She could have birthing difficulties and need rushed for an emergency spay. You know, any of these things can happen. So it's more than just, oh, I'm going to get some cute babies. It's please think about the really, really big picture of it. And as I say, it's going to be like very small that have issues. But the other thing to touch on is you're bringing unknown backgrounds, unknown health, unknown temperament. You know, you don't know, you basically just bring a big mishmash of things into the world, and you don't know how kind of messed up they're going to be, so to speak. You know, they could have a lot of hormonal issues, health issues, and really that's just the point of breeding, is to bring healthy rats into the world, not add to the problem of having sort of like, you know, hormonal messed up rats that need neutered and spayed. So yes, very much, please do not do it. Do not.
Yeah.
Rat fancy is so inclusive, like my and many other people's experiences, that it's inclusive. If you build a relationship with a breeder and let them know that you want to breed, you can contribute to their lines and breed from well-bred rats, which, I mean, those, you're always putting the doe at risk, but at least it's for a good reason, and not just because you want to look at them, you know, the birds and the bees happening in front of you. Like, you can still enjoy that, you can still raise a litter, but do it in partnership with a breeder, because there's many of us that would support you through that.
I want to raise a litter. Someone give me one.
You're not close enough.
I'm too far. So what would you say are the top 5 things to look out for in a good breeder if you're trying to find a good reputable breeder? What would you say the things to look out for that they're doing that's good?
Not being insular, I think, or being guarded about foundations and where their rats came from. So by insular, I mean, if they're, can I use the S word, if they are bad-mouthing other ratteries, or making it that they are pushing other ratteries down to put themselves on a pedestal without solid evidence and reason. And if, when you ask them, what are you breeding for and where are your foundations from, they are vague about the rattery that they got them from, then that's probably, maybe that's 2 or 1. We can say that's 1 that I'd probably then go away from that kind of a person.
Yeah, I'm trying to like break it down into kind of 5 bits. So like transparency, definitely being there, being a part of the fancy, like being involved, and then being registered. I do think it's good to be registered, but as we said before, like check, because just because you're registered, like check everything else. As you said about like talk about their foundations, where they're from, you know, be proud to have that information, and like talk about like the health lines as well. Like if I, you know, someone spoke to you, I've only had one person so far a long time ago asked me for kittens, and she came out and asked me what health issues we had, and I was honest and said, I'm so early in my breeding, I don't have like much to tell you, but so far this is what we had, and I only had like a couple of issues I could tell her. And obviously being a new breeder, you're not going to have a lot of history, but also that's probably another one to note, is someone who does have that history. Like we've all got these spreadsheets whenever we've set them up, and you know, I write, you know, who takes my babies. I like to find out, you know, what's caused them to pass away, if it's just been old age, etc. Like all this is like all relevant to me. So like as a breeder, I love to have all this information back from my pet homes. Bag crumble. He's away. Oh no, hard.
Sorry.
It's okay. I think I kind of covered most of it. Like I think we got most of it there.
I had a couple of questions about open versus closed ratteries, and I think that can be hard when you're trying to think about when people go to a breeder and they're not necessarily allowed in the rat room for whatever reason. It can be quite hard because you're not seeing the conditions the rats are kept in, so you can't really judge whether it's a good situation or not. Do you have any thoughts on like closed ratteries and not being allowed to go in and look at the rats?
I think it's easy to hide how your actual animals are kept, especially in your home. Because somebody could, so I've heard a rumour about a particular fancy where they'll have a show cage, which is adhering to how the internet says that you should like the minimum requirements for providing enrichment in a good cage, but actually their animals are kept elsewhere further back in the house. And obviously you're not going to be like, may I have a house tour, but they'll be elsewhere, so you're never actually going to see that true vision of it. So I guess for me, there are times when people can't come into this room, or wouldn't, because no one's been in this room yet, it's coronavirus. But if I had a doe who had just had a litter, for example, then they probably wouldn't be allowed to come in. But also I would be limiting my access to being around her. I can see why that would happen. I'm trying to say, like, on one hand, I can see why you'd want to see it, because you always want to see what mum and dad look like, if you can, because sometimes dad might belong to somebody else. And you want to check that how they're keeping their rats is, you know, how, like, you want to verify that they're having a good life, and they're not actually in those little lab, like, you know, the little tanks kind of thing, and they're all little rows, and it's just no enrichment, just a little bit of substrate and a water bottle and some food. So I can understand why you would want to do that. I guess, like, for me, because I'm quite open photographically about what my rats look like, and so as long as we share our cage layouts and cleaning kind of thing, then if there's a reason why you can't go in, you can probably ask for photographs. I'm planning on taking a video of the rat room so that it can be on YouTube, so people can see how I keep my rats. I don't think that should be a minimum requirement for all ratteries, because not everyone has the time to create those kind of things, but you can ask for pictures. And then I guess that's just about making sure that when you're talking to that rattery, that you trust them as well, to understand why you might not be allowed access to their full area if they have one.
Yeah.
Also, you're like a risk vector for infection coming in if you have like your own resident population.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Lynn, if you want to add anything or clarity to what I said.
No, I mean, I think it's different because mine are in a shed, so they're outside. So basically, when I did have 2 boys go the other week, they walked into my back garden. I said, you can look in the window. So they literally were seeing in. But as you said, like, I'm very transparent with what I do. People have seen videos, live videos, pictures, like it's all there. But I do that for my enjoyment and for sharing it. Like, I don't do that so that I'm trying to shout out, oh, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, look at me, look what I do. I like to do it because I enjoy it. It was so weird not being able to let people in, because even just chatting to the pet home, like, I'm so used to going, oh, here's mum, you know, here's dad, here's my best looking one that I've got just now. I hope you're, you know, this is what you kind of want to aim for if you want to have a good show. And, you know, I love showing off like the whole family, especially when I've got maybe like 2 or 3 generations like sitting in the same cage. I just really enjoy doing that. So this has been the only time that I've not been able to let people in. Any other time, I've not had any young litters. It's just been, I think the youngest litter I had was probably about 3 weeks old, and that was okay for them to let in. I let them play with the babies a little bit, because I mean, it's quite good for the socialisation. But yeah, pretty much just, if you can't get in, like today's circumstances, then videos. Was it not you, Emma, that did a live with a pet home? Like
yeah,
a live?
I've been doing video chats and been like, this is mum, this is dad, because they're not going to get to like cuddle group kind of thing. Yeah. Or and they're not going to be able to handle anyone. But yeah, I did the same, especially when you give them a kitten and you're like the bucks, and you're like, that rat, like this tiny rat is going to be this big when they're older, and just to make sure that they're comfortable with that. But yeah,
I remember when you did that with me with Crumble. Was it Hops that you had? And he was a tiny baby, and you were like, he's going to be this big, and I was like, oh no.
You're like, none of my rats feel like this. I was like, he's solid, isn't he? Yeah, your face, I realised that all your boys look bigger on camera. After seeing your face, because I thought you would be like, oh yeah, like, that's fine. And you were like, what?
So I know both of you take applications for people that want your rats. What are some of the main reasons that would maybe come up on those applications that people fill out that you maybe would choose not to home your rats to them, or you'd have to work with them to correct these things?
I'm very transparent about what my hard no's are. I don't home to people that only use fleece in their cages, and I don't home to people that are choosing to use nuggets. And I give reasons for both of those hard lines. So people who then argue with me about what I know my lines and rats thrive with, that kind of environment. That's a hard no, and I'm quite transparent about what those are. So I don't know if people aren't reading, aren't reading my FAQs or how I keep my rats before they apply, or if they just have read that that's how, you know, the recommended way of feeding and housing rats, and they've just not shifted beyond that. But that's probably the one red flag that will have me move on to the next application, and it's just because it's hard to assess if there's not more detail put there, like why they've applied to you, if that's how they choose to care for their rat. And being very vague on the application as well. So the application process isn't an assessment. It's not like going back to school and you're going to get a pass and fail mark, but it is a first impression, and it's a launch point for me especially to work out how much have you looked into the care of a rat, how many sources and things have you read, even if it was that they read, so the UK and the US care is quite different in the recommendations. Like I can already hear people typing to be like, fleece is perfectly acceptable and it's fine if it works for you, but it doesn't work for my rats, kind of thing. They like to burrow and dig and they would chew your fleece to hell and back. But even if people say I've read these two sources and I'm not sure, what do you think? At least that lets me know that they're reading and they're interested in providing care and working out how a rat lives so that they can provide the best environment for rats to thrive. And if you're not given anything, or you're given one-line answers, or you're given answers to your questions which are whatever you think or whatever you say to do, that can be very challenging. And that happens more frequently than you would think as well.
I think you get, there's varying kind of people that you get applying. So the ones that are fantastic are ones that have either been in the fancy a while, or just generally know their stuff, and they're just like, they're quick, oh my god, right, that's you, like you've answered everything to the T. Then you get the ones that are kind of in the middle ground, they're doing some of the things that you like, some not quite right, you think, well, that's fine. And then you've got the kind of bottom scale of, right, everything's not my standard. And I think I should point out that probably statement made me sound really bad there, but I do have a standard for my rats, and that's just part of what you would have to accept if you wanted some of mine. And what you should remember is what I have as a standard for my rats is not the same as what everyone else has. So there's going to be different standards for everybody. And I'm quite happy to work with someone. I even say, at the start of my little blurb that comes with my questionnaire, if you don't know anything, just say, and quite often I'll get ones going, can we get advice on this? Don't know, sorry, could you help? And that's fine. I'll sit there and I'll spend time talking to you. It's just frustrating if, again, I don't like fleece. I don't like nuggets either. So if they've got those in there, I'll spend the time and say, have you heard about these other options? Can I suggest these other options? And then you kind of get a feel from their answers whether they're going to go, oh, I didn't know about that. That's really good. Really like that. Okay, I'll try that. That sounds way better. And you're confident that they're moving in the direction that you want them to move. And then sadly, you do get the ones that you just think, I feel you're just saying what I want you to hear. Mm-hmm. But I'm not getting the vibe that you're actually going to do what I want you to do. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to think that any reputable breeder out there has their standard, and you just need to find the breeder that kind of gels and mixes with you. And I was just speaking to someone today about generally chatting, and we've chatted a lot back and forth, and I did just say, I'm sorry I ask all these questions, but it's very important to me that they go off to really good homes and receive the care that I want. And they said, no, that's quite all right. And we've chatted some more. And that's exactly what you need, is to have that kind of, bounce off each other. Be willing to learn. I don't care if you come in and know nothing, I'll help you. If you come in and maybe don't have the same care that I want you to have, then please be willing to learn from me. So yeah, they're the kind of three parts that you get in an application process. So I love the ones that know everything, but they're so rare. But that's fine. We're going to work with you. We will work with you.
Yeah. I think as well, you can be selective, because you're not here trying to peddle rats and get them out the door as quick as possible. you want to pick, and sometimes you'll have more people interested in the rats than you actually have rats to home out. So you can be selective when you want to pick the right home for them, and sometimes that might not be someone that's sending in an application.
Yeah, and if you feel very strongly that the care that you want to provide works for you, and it's not what Lynn and I, for example, feel would be good for our rats, then you don't have to get our rats. There are other people and other sources that you could go to, and that's fine. You can find somebody more compatible. There's many ratteries out there.
So this is a quick question. Would you ever take back rats if one of them becomes a lone rat or the owners can't keep their rats for whatever reason?
Yes, always.
Yes.
Like 100%. It's part of my verbal terms and conditions, is that if someone's not able to home the rat, and especially if that's a solo rat, I'll take it back. Someone needs to rehome and they find a family member and they want to home their rats to that person, that's fine. I just want to know where they've gone so that I can contact, but always come back here. Always. Yeah. Or they can holiday here. If they're going on holiday, I'll pet sit because I want to cuddle them.
Yeah, definitely just take them back. I had 2 older bucks from my first litter come back just when they were about, just coming up to 2 years old, and they both came back to me. I've still got one's passed away now, but yeah, they come back, definitely.
Yeah. Good. So what would you say is the best and worst thing about being a breeder?
Do you want to go first, Lynn?
The best thing is walking into the rat room and you hear like the babies. And that's one that's had like a perfectly safe birth, obviously no issues, just hear the babies, and you know that like that sound is amazing. I still remember the first time that I went into the shed and heard that. So that's probably like the best thing. And the worst thing would be just dealing with the complications, which I've already touched on earlier. Like the complications are the bad things.
Emma?
So my worst is exactly the same. There's nothing worse than going in and realising there's something not right with a kitten at any stage or your doe, and trying to make the best decision to resolve that. And like, you know, you're just sitting with your phone, try to contact people to get help, and it's horrible. For me, one of the best things is when I get messages back from people that have my kittens and they love them, because that makes it easier to put it bluntly, let them go, because I can't keep everyone. Or when a rat that I have bred is doing really well, is super healthy and does well at shows, not because I want to win, but because people are then complimenting me on the selection, and I know that my selections are going in the right direction because their types like absolutely bombing it. They feel good, they feel healthy, and it's not my opinion, it's other experienced breeders' opinions. Like that just to me kind of helps. Like nothing beats that when you're like, oh my god, I'm making the right decisions.
So the next question is, if someone has a lone rat and they approach you asking if they could borrow some of your rats, possibly to kind of foster just until their rat passes away and then maybe give back to you, is that something you'd consider possibly doing to help them out in that situation?
Unlikely if I don't know the person, because my rats are my pets. I'm not, like, I don't know why there seems to be a kind of assumption on, like, because I'm a breeder, because I have multiple animals, that I will just, you know, ship them off to boarding school until your rat passes on. Like, that's still stressful for them. Yes, to me, it feels the same as if people were to ask you, like, Emmy, can I borrow Crumble, kind of thing, which, like, is, you know, that would be horrifying.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. If I had homed a kitten to somebody and that rat was in the position of being in, sorry, it would be a pair, so they have a solo rat, and I have relatives, and I feel like that pet home continued to be a really good pet home, maybe, but I'm more likely to offer that solo rat comes to me and lives out their life as part of the mischief. And I have rats in my group who were in that circumstance and did come here because they were solo rats and their keeper didn't want to continue to keep rats. But to me, that's very, it's very sad. Like, I can't imagine, how would I pick who goes? Like, they all mean a lot to me, and there's a reason why I gave them their own Instagram. Lynn, I don't know if you've got the same.
I definitely struggle to do it as well. Like, I would do the same thing as what you suggested, is like ask them if they wanted them to come to me first, because that's going to be the way easier option for me, because as you said, like picking one or two that you were like, oh, maybe don't like you as much as others, off you go. Like, that seems quite mean. So now I would try and, like, the ideal situation would be that I've maybe got some kittens that were needing homed at that point, and they could have been my keepers. So then I could be like, well, I intend to breed from these, but you know what, maybe it would work out if you take them for a little bit and then I'll take them back later. But I would find it very difficult. I could take them in 100%, but to give ones out, I'd really struggle.
Yeah. So I think in that situation, although it's not something that a lot of people want to come to terms with if they don't want to carry on owning rats, it's in the rat's best interest for it to go somewhere else to live with other rats as it's meant to. So
it's something that is tough, and you'll hear people that are saying that they'll be fine on their own, but they're not fine. They're social animals. Like, that's ridiculous. But it is in their best interests.
Yeah.
Or just keep having rats. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, don't stop. Just keep going.
What's your problem? Can we get kittens?
So I think this question probably comes from people that maybe have the assumption, as I said when we were discussing at the start, that most breeders are mass breeding and producing a lot of rats, but how many times do you breed one rat in their lifetime, and how do you make sure they're not being overbred, and what would be a good reason that you wouldn't breed them again?
I tend to just do once, although I did have 2 does that went full term and then bled but didn't have any babies. They just reabsorbed them. So technically, if you count that, then they were twice. Mm-hmm. That's just my personal take on it. I just don't like the thought of doing it twice, but I have no issue with people that do, because many breeders do it twice. So I tend to just do it like the once, and then I tend to do that just before they're a year old. So anywhere from about 7.5 months to maybe 8.5, 9 months, that's when you're kind of trying to pair them up. But yeah, I tend to just do once.
Emma?
So I have actually bred most of my does once, but that's because I've gotten what I needed from those pairings. I bred my Aurora girl group twice because I didn't get what I needed from her first litter. Whether you breed them a second time, so the reason why I was happy to breed Groot a second time, first of all, I spoke to Lynn about it because she bred her originally, and I wanted to check that her line would be okay with that. But when Groot had her first litter, it was how long did it take for her to recover from that litter? And with most of my does, they bounce back pretty quickly, but that's not a universal experience across all rats. But I'd be uncomfortable breeding a third time, because to me, I just like I just like them to retire after I've gotten what I need. I would probably breed a third time in very exceptional circumstances, but I've not been there, and I don't know what that would feel like what that guideline would be, kind of thing. It would have to be something very, very special or critical, but because I partner with so many other ratteries, then I don't think I would really be in that position.
Yeah, I think the question in terms of like where it was coming from with people asking, I've seen some people on Facebook and groups and stuff say that if the mother has a negative reaction towards you touching the babies or being near the babies, some breeders that do breed more than once might use that as a reason not to breed from her again. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't think that translates so much into the UK fancy.
No.
Our point of view seems to be less using behavioural indicators to assess whether that rat's a ticking time bomb, I think is the phrase used. And we seem to take more of the stance that that we have chosen to breed those rats, and if the hormonal fluctuations that happen with that doe mean that in the few days before and after she's feeling more defensive, then we take that as an indicator that we should leave her alone. In the same way, if a doe has a very difficult birth and doesn't immediately sit on her kittens and settle down with them, that the best course of action that we should take is to leave her alone and keep an eye on her so that we can assess whether she needs medical intervention or not. So my feeling is that the UK fancy, and I don't think that this is everybody, but the pockets in the echo chamber that I sit in and that I choose to follow is more that we've put the rats in this situation and be respectful. So I don't use that as an indicator on whether to breed a second time or not. And I've also been in the position where none of my does have behaved like that, but her doing that would make me more respectful of her space, but wouldn't change my likelihood of breeding her a second time. I don't think that anybody I know who's had a doe who's become defensive or protective of her nest, I've not really seen or heard any evidence from them when their rats have then done well in shows, especially in pet classes, that any of her kittens have then been more aggressive or more difficult to handle.
Okay, well that was the last question. Thank you guys. Do you have any parting words? I'll leave all of your links and stuff to your channel and your Instagrams in the description for anyone that wants to check you out and maybe watch more things about breeding. I know, Lynn, you're doing some videos on your channel at the moment showing people around your rattery and stuff, which I found really interesting. So is there anything you want to say? Any parting words?
No, I think just please take on board some of the things that we've said today, especially if you're one of the people that are thinking about breeding. Like, just take a minute and really, really think about, you know, what that involves and everything. So yeah, I think that's probably the best thing we bring from this whole conversation, is to really step back. And if it means you want to reach out to either one of us and have more in-depth conversations, we can certainly give you links to places where you can look into that further.
Yeah. And I can also put some in the description if you find any useful ones for anyone. I can put them in the description too. Emma, anything?
No, I think Lynn covered it very well. Like and subscribe to Emmy's channel.
Hopefully everyone watching is subscribed anyway, but subscribe to these two too.
True fans! Subscribe to Emmyology and watch all of her adverts. You can cut that if you'd like, but they should.
No,
them all.
they need to. I need that money. I'm trying to buy a house here, so
watch all the adverts.
Thanks.
All the adverts twice. Just like do the dishes, listen to us chat. No, I don't know whether we should say that when the video goes up, then I'm going to speak for Lynn, but I'll certainly keep an eye on the comments if anyone wants any additional clarification or like to like the research that backs up what we're saying, or to a lot of the things might be embedded in the NFRS forum. That's where they have an amazing forum which maintains its history. That Lynn and I have definitely spent a lot of time like browsing through, but if anyone's questioning the things said, then we can definitely link that or just have a conversation.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys found this interesting and helpful, especially if you are considering going to a reputable breeder to get your rats. Hopefully this has made things a lot clearer when it comes to talking to them and the whole process of getting your rats from them, and hopefully it's answered some of your questions. If you do have any more questions about what it's like to be a rat breeder and the process of being a rat breeder that we didn't answer in this video, do let us know down in the comments if you'd like a part 2 and maybe even a part 3 eventually, because I got a lot of questions. Most of them were kind of the same question which we did touch on in this video, but there were so many more that we couldn't answer because this would be a very, very long video. So if you'd like us to do a part 2, make sure to comment down below. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out Emma and Lynn's information in the description, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!